It's great to see so much young energy and excitement back on the farm, and we really appreciate you sharing your stories with us. Right now, we're going to be visiting with a Central Texas gardener friend and veteran, Tricia Shari. Welcome to the program.
Thanks,
You're here
Tom.
to celebrate a book that you've just published on a great imprint, one of the best, I think, in terms of publishers in the gardening world. The book is titled Vegetable Gardening in the Southwest, and first, just congratulations.
Thanks, Tom. It's really been a labor of love, and I'm very excited to have it done.
I get the done piece.
Yes.
There was a little emphasis there. And speaking of getting it done, this is a book about getting it done, really, for the people who really want to get their hands dirty and get out there and get some real production out of their gardens. This is really designed to help them do that.
Well, I wanted it to be for people who just didn't have a clue about gardening, didn't know where to begin, how to start, what they needed, what to look out for. So I wanted to really cover all the bases for beginners, but I still think there's a lot of good information that even seasoned gardeners can get a lot out of the book too, just with hints and tips that I've picked up along my way of over 30 years of gardening commercially.
Well, I'll testify. I opened it up and I learned something on the first page. I picked it up.
Oh, great.
So I think it's a great resource for people. There's so much good practical information in here. But everything starts with the soil and the planting beds when you talk about gardening.
Absolutely.
And this is designed for the Southwest, and an area not known for especially fertile soils.
Not great soils at all.
Right.
So there's, soil building is always a challenge for people, whether you've got sandy soil or caliche soil or the heavy clay. There's always something that you can do to turn that around, and building raised beds is a huge thing that for gardeners to be successful too. So I go into some various schemes and manners of building raised beds as well.
Right, building raised beds and amending the soils appropriately. There's one topic you get into, which is about tilling, which is something I'm real interested in. I've been reading a lot of, there are various camps in this war. There are a lot of people who say you should not till. You destroy the kind of the balance of the soil when you till. And there are others that say, no, you can till appropriately, but obviously some people do not follow the appropriate rules.
Well, I'm a confessed ex-tiller myself. I used to have both a mini tiller and a big tiller. And especially with clay soils, what I was finding was when I would till, even every season, after a while I had this real hard layer of soil below where the tiller tines got. And then I had to break that up because I was gardening in a fairly clay soil, and that area below the depth of the tiller just became like rock. So that's one reason. And I just, even when I'm turning my soil with a spading fork now, which is about all I do, I disturb the earthworms. I disturb the structure of the soil. And I don't even like to do, very much of that. That doesn't happen in nature. No one goes out and tills the wildflower meadows in nature, and they survive just fine. So
yeah, right.
I just don't feel like we have to do as much. And it's really easier when you're a gardener, when you're pulling out the things from the last season. You do some light tilling, mix in your new amendments, and plant again. It's a lot less work for you.
Yeah,
so
well, there's something to be said for that.
It's another reason not to till.
All right. Well, one of the techniques is just to layer different materials in, and some people call this the lasagna technique, and this is something you talk about in the book as well. Describe that for us real briefly.
Well, it's a system of layering to create garden soil, and so you can layer newspaper, cardboard, leaves, yard trimmings, kitchen waste, and actually build a garden soil. It's almost like building a compost pile that is going to become your next garden bed. And because we have such poor soils in the Southwest, it's a way for people to build garden beds without importing a lot of soil. And not everyone has access to a truck or wants to spend the time and energy to build raised beds with buying soil. So the lasagna beds and hugelkultur and Keyhole Gardens provide a way to build your own garden beds and have excellent soil very quickly.
Yeah.
And the soil is so rich in organic material that you use a lot less water too.
Yeah, use less water and less space too
Exactly.
for big production. And I'm particularly interested in the keyhole gardening technique, and you get into this. For those who aren't familiar, just describe briefly what that looks like.
Well, keyhole gardens can be any shape or size. It doesn't really have to be limited to a small space, but it's almost, really, it's a lasagna bed that has a compost pile in the center of it. And the compost pile gets organic material and water added to it, and then that feeds the surrounding soil. So you have a constant input of organic material to the bed, and it keeps the plants happy, it keeps the soil microbes happy, and keeps your garden producing well.
Right. You know, when I remember when I first started gardening, I got some advice. I think it was from my dad actually, who's like, every year when you garden, you have to go in there and dig all the old plant out and throw it away. And I think the philosophy has turned around a little bit on that.
Well, when you think about the plant's roots have been pulling nutrients from the soil and using the nutrients that we've been adding, so they're full of nutrients. So it seems kind of silly to take that and we would put those in our compost pile, but they break down in the soil quite well. And I think I really learned this initially from Carol Ann Sale at Boggy Creek Farm. She said, you know, she calls it tickle tilling, just barely scratch the surface of the soil, leave the roots in to decompose and feed the next crop. So again, it's less work for the gardener.
Yeah.
And so it's really a win for the vegetables and a win for the gardener too.
And you know, I think for a long time gardeners just caught up in technique, and if it had to involve lots of labor, otherwise it wasn't true gardening.
Well, and especially on the ornamental side of gardening, people just thought that you had to do all of these extreme measures and
all the spraying and all the
it just
trimming.
doesn't really have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be at all. And this is something that the book is definitely an organic gardening guide.
Absolutely.
As I've learned to garden really over my entire lifetime up until tomorrow, hopefully, I've learned that actually the organic approach really is easier in so many ways.
It is. I get asked all the time, well, because I manage the acreage at Lake Austin Spa organically and have since I've been there, and I've been there over 30 years. And I have people ask me, well, what do you do about crepe myrtle aphid, or what do you do about whiteflies on your lantana? And I'm like, well, gee, I never get that. You know, I don't tend to have as many pests and disease problems as a lot of people who garden chemically, because I think that I'm paying attention to what plants need.
The balance.
And I sometimes think that we can create more problems by overfeeding and overwatering our plants. So doing less, again, is a key to success.
All right. Well, this is a topical program when we have our Central Texas gardeners out there right now. We're coming up on February and March. What are you preparing for your own garden at this time?
Well, it's potato time, so it's time to get those potatoes, get them sprouted, and get those in the ground. And I love potatoes. There's just nothing like homegrown potatoes. A lot of trimming back. You know, it's February is the time we start pruning our roses and the native grasses and the crepe myrtles. So there's fruit trees to prune. So it's a time when those pruning shears and loppers have to be sharpened daily to keep them going.
I always think of the crepe myrtle pruning, or the first pruning of the deciduous material is like the starting gate for the whole season, really, in my ornamental gardening.
Absolutely. And then you've got all those trimmings to build new beds.
Well, as I said, the book is really terrific. It's designed, and you've designed this really for the beginner, but as you indicated, it has something in there really for everybody. And all the way down to which varieties to plant and when to plant and all of that. I mean,
which ones, the varieties that do better for the Southwest, because the tomatoes that do well for us in Texas are not necessarily what are going to do well in New Jersey. So we have to keep that in mind with our planting. And I coach a lot of people in their own gardens, so I know the kinds of questions that beginners have, and I've tried to include the things that, even in my weekly gardening classes at Lake Austin Spa, the kinds of questions that I get, I try to include those types of topics in the book.
Well, you have succeeded beautifully.
Thank
the book
you.
is Vegetable Gardening in the Southwest on Timber Press. Thanks for stopping in to tell us about it.
Thanks a lot, Tom. It's been a great pleasure.
Okay, now it's Daphne's turn.